50 years ago today, said I do.
And does she still buy them? Any visiting Rotarians anywhere? What a shame, they're gonna miss a good program today. Our blessing today comes from a guy who got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Pulitzer Prize, Nobel Prize, 34 Grammys. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He won a Golden Globe and only one Academy Award, but I know 2 other times he should have won the Academy Award. So listen with me. May your hands always be busy. May your feet always be swift. May you have a strong foundation when the winds of changes shift. May your heart always be joyful. May your song always be sung. May you stay forever young. Bob Dylan. I love Bob Dylan. Linda hates Bob Dylan, so I can only play him when she's not around. And Karen's not here today, and I promised her the next time I was up here I'd tell her why I'm not buried in Arlington Cemetery. And Keith, raise your hand, Keith. When he was sergeant at arms, he gave those 3 little vignettes that I thought were wonderful, little strange things that happened in his life. Well, these 3 things that happened in my life saved my life, and I really didn't have anything to do with any of them. It was a little bit of history and a little bit of good timing. So I'm drafted in 1970 in the Army, and even though I was a pharmacist and they needed pharmacists, I was in the infantry. I'm a trained killer. And so I'm in Fort Polk, Louisiana, which if y'all don't know how bad Fort Polk is, they furnished a trailer park for the officers. That was as good as you could get at Fort Polk. So I'm on my last Saturday night before I go to jungle warfare training, which is straight to Vietnam. 100% of these go to Vietnam. And I had my last conversation with Linda. There were 60 of us for one phone. We have 3 minutes each. And I didn't know when I'd ever talk to her again. I've been married 2 years at this time. She was here. And so that was Saturday night. Sunday, she decides to go see her parents in Dunn, and her daddy's drugstore happened to be open that afternoon, and she went by to see him on her way out of town. And this old dentist came in who knows both families. Oh, I shouldn't have told you that first.
Start over.
The Army had been spying on civilians. And guess what? That's against the law in the United States. And Sam Ervin, our senator, was in charge of the Senate subcommittee investigating the Army. That was pre-Watergate. So this old dentist comes in and sees Linda upset and wants to know what's going on, and she told him. And he said, well, that's sort of silly.
Hey, Cliff, wait, why was she upset?
He calls this guy the commanding officer at Fort Polk, Louisiana, because at 7 o'clock every Monday morning we had a command inspection, and we're all lined up there, and they called me out of line, gave me new orders, sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia to be a pharmacist in a hospital where I should have been, and that's why you have me here today. Thank you very much. And when they called me, I didn't know where that came from. That was all just strange. And Tim, you're standing in today. Where's Tim? You the president, you got anything to say? Everybody, I know Erica helped. Everybody who's worked on Family House, stand up. Who's helped serve Family House. Because Joe Jenkins does an incredible job. Okay, now everybody else put some money in the bank. Phil's worked on 140 habitat houses. You're excused, Phil. He not only gives them his heart and soul, he gave them a couple of fingers one time.
How about the Woodruff Warriors?
Yeah, where's Bob?
Woodruff, Bob's in Bulgaria on a bike trip.
Good for Bob. That's not, he's in the Rotary Club, but it's not our Rotary, family. I do both of them. So.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything important to say? Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I do have something. Sorry, I was waiting to see what this trip was all about.
Oh, that's my blessing.
Oh, you had to read it. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't memorize that.
All right. Well, Cliff, thank you. That was well done. As Cliff was talking, I thought maybe if we got a ninth chance at the NCAA and we put Cliff in front of him, Tez Walker will be playing tomorrow. But and if you don't know about that situation, ask Diane Smith. She doesn't have an opinion about it. We do have a few announcements. Is Linda Sanders?
I am.
Hello.
Here.
Hey, do you want to shout or you want to drink?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So we have our next litter pickup on Saturday, the 23rd of September, so 2 weeks from tomorrow. And everybody should have received, I'm sorry, but you received 2 emails. There was one that was corrected that has the details. So we'll be meeting at Estes Hills Elementary, and we will be fanning out from there. And a wonderful thing that we're going to be doing is the Interact Club that Lorenzo was instrumental in getting organized at East Chapel Hill High School. Members of the Interact Club are going to be joining us also. So the 23rd, those of you who would like to sign up, please do. I'm doing about 12 people signed up already.
Need some more. But nice segue, because I was going to call on Lorenzo, because a couple weeks ago, we met a few of the kids that were starting to interact at East Chapel Hill, and just wanted to get an update because it's some feat.
Hey Tim, yeah, thank you very much. So I sent out a photo yesterday that probably you all saw, which was the first meeting. Interact has the potential to dramatically change how this club interacts with the Chapel Hill community. They now have 40 kids saying they're members after their first meeting. And of course, there could be attrition, maybe there's more. There are Interact clubs in the district, in the triangle, that have over 150 kids. So this has the potential to be a really big thing. And you know, what gets me excited is 40 some odd kids went home yesterday, probably excited, talking to mom and dad about Interact and Rotary. And chances are people just don't understand that much about what we do. So it's a tremendous way to communicate to folks our mission, how we help the community, and help us grow. So 40 kids is, I think, it's like hitting a grand slam. And it's a lot because Eric's daughter is a ball of fire. And you guys all congratulate me, and I take full credit for the job they did raising her. And also, so we have a committee, an Interact committee, which is probably going to be in transition as we learn what to do to be a good club sponsoring an Interact club. But the initial members are Kaiser Kuo, who has a son at Chapel Hill, who's in East Chapel Hill, who's in that club, as well as Eric and myself. So the challenge for us is to make sure that we have everything possible so these kids have a great runway to learn. They're excited about doing things that we already do. You know, they're excited to do Siku House. The problem is Joe can't have 40 kids show up for dinner one night. That would just be a mob scene. So we have to figure out also, and they have to do it on their own. Interact, it technically is something that the kids run. And I suspect that Eva and her co-president, Lewis, will do a great job of figuring that out. My personal goal is for them to have a legacy in place so that when they graduate this year, there will be kids that want to continue with this. And one exciting piece of news that we confirmed just in the last, I guess, 24 hours with Linda's good help. The teacher, his name is Greg King. He's an ESL teacher at East, and he is the teacher advisor. He got very excited about what Rotary does, and he will become a member of our club. Yeah. So it's all good news, and it's very exciting. And from time to time, we might be reaching out. Eric Kaiser and I might be reaching out for your help as we figure out how to grow this thing, and I thank you for that in advance.
It's been a lot of hard work, so congratulations to everyone involved. Are there other announcements from anybody? Well, with that, Bob and Ann, congratulations again. And Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tim. All right, here's your pop quiz for today. What do Mount Olive Pickles, UNC Women's Lacrosse, and Playboy Magazine have in common? And it's not Dickie Bedour. If you haven't read the bio for today's speaker, you're about to get a treat. Greg Hone is here today to tell us a bit about his work, which you can read about in his new book, Spontaneous Performance for Professional and Personal Life. Greg is an improv actor, a jazz musician turned business school professor. He was at Duke and came over to the bright side and is now at Keenan Flagler Business School. And we are so thrilled to have you here with us today. Please give a big old Rotary welcome to Greg Hone.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. When Cliff was talking about Dylan, I thought that sounded a lot like my background in the Emmys and the Academy Awards and all that. And then I realized, no, that's actually not my real life. But thanks. So nice to see you all. Good to be here. There's a nice warm feeling in this room. Not as warm as outside, but still nice and warm. The first Rotary Club meeting I ever went to, I was about 8 years old, and y'all were trying to recruit me, of course. Thank you. Three laughs. Tough room. No, my grandfather, who was a dentist in Yankton, South Dakota, brought me to the luncheon. It was a really nice time. All right, so what we're going to do here, because we've all just eaten, some of us are still eating, I guess, but we're going to do just a little bit of warm-up thing here, because I'm going to have you doing some improvisation. But to ward off the post-lunch torpor, what I'm going to have you do is stand as you are able, and let's do that right now. We'll do something very serious here, so no laughing is allowed, okay? Just warning you. We're going to do something called the dragon and the clam, all right? So, when you're doing this, I want you to share this with your neighbors at your table, maybe other people in the room, your friends, your enemies if you've got some. If not, this is a good way to make some. So, anyway, this is the dragon. Here's how I do the dragon, all right? All right, your turn. Very nice, very nice. All right, now we're going to do the clam, which is kind of the opposite. The clam that goes like this. All right? All right, now we're going to do 3 of each, back to back. Like I said, get it out there in the room, share it. So you ready to do this? Yeah? Okay, here we go. Okay. All right, you can sit back now. Okay. I hope no one is feeling too serious now. I like to tell my students there's nothing harder to take seriously than someone who takes themselves too seriously. So what we're going to do today is we're going to goof off a little bit. Now I thought I'd explain just a little bit about what improv is. Improv is short for improvisational theater, which means making it up as you go along, which is different from scripted theater. Most of you have seen scripted plays, and I'm sure some of you have seen some improv. That's just making it up as you go along. And that's my specialty. Now, there is a lot of confusion about what improv is. People think it's stand-up comedy. That's actually not what it is at all. And part of that is due to the fact that there's a chain of comedy clubs called the Improv. And they only do stand-up there. They don't do improv at the Improv. It would be like if you walked into a Waffle House and said, yeah, could I get some waffles here? Like, no. You have to go to an International House of Pancakes for those. But anyway, so that's what it is. And I'm going to have you do some making stuff up on the spot here in just a moment. So anyway, also, improv actually doesn't have to be funny. I've been doing this for a really long time. And I found audiences will laugh at just about anything, in part because there's some tension involved. The tension of seeing people on stage who are discovering something, creating it as they go. And it puts people on edge. And of course, when you're tense like that, oftentimes you'll laugh a little bit. But my company's motto is, if you laugh, we're doing comedy, and if you don't, we're doing drama. And I found that suits us very well. All right, so here's what I'm going to have you do right now. At each of your tables, this is going to be tough for just the two of you. So I don't know, you might want to join another table or something. But, well, now you've got three, so you're in perfect shape. So I'm going to have each table, and you're going to be doing this all at the same time. You're going to make up a story. And you're going to make up the story one sentence at a time. All right? Yeah. So, maybe Jennifer starts over here, and then we go over here to Jim, and we keep going around. And everybody adds a sentence to the story. And I'll give you a few minutes. In fact, I might even give you a starting sentence that you can build off of, just to see where you go with this. Now, what are you going to say with your sentence? Well, some of you are probably already thinking about that. Don't worry about it. Or do worry about it. Fine, it doesn't really bother me if you want to be worried about it. But the first two words I want you to say with your sentence are yes and. Okay? It's going to be a little bit grammatically unwieldy, but that's what I want you to do. And we'll talk about why when you've told your story. So, don't worry about being clever, about winning a Pulitzer, about being funny. Just try to make sense with your story. All right, do you have any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to give you the prompt. And then actually each table, why don't you go in a clockwise fashion, and you'll probably go around a few times. But we do need to identify the starter at each table. So raise your hand if you're willing to be the person who starts the story of your stage. All right. Great. All right. All right, thank you, starters. Do you have any questions? Are you ready? Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, here is the first line of the story that you're going to build off of.
One sentence.
One sentence at a time, and then, but you'll probably go around a few times. So you'll wind up contributing, maybe up to 5, maybe, who knows, maybe even a few more sentences. And actually, I'll prompt you, I'll say, all right, try to wrap it up. So that you'll know you're trying to close up your story, trying to finish your story.
How are we going to remember what we...
Not my problem. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it will be seared across your memory banks. I'm not really sure. All right. So the first line, the first sentence of your story is, once upon a time, Sarah got on a sailboat and sailed away from the shore.
Yes. Yes, and there was a question whether the community would tolerate what you're just thinking about. Sail to the east.
gosh. I don't know. Yes, and she decided to give it a try anyway. And what she tried was very interesting.
No, it was interesting. It was terribly overrated. How come why? Because it's
Yes, that is
Captain of the ship saw what was happening with Sarah and the whale in the water and decided to take action.
See if you can find an ending to your story. Okay. All right. I'm guessing that most of you are done. I'm hearing some clapping. You seem pretty happy back there. How did it go?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Faulkner-esque.
Faulkner-esque. Wow. Oh, okay.
Flavor of the absurd.
Yeah. Okay. What happened in your story?
Well, she went off to sail into the setting sun, and then she wound up at Palo Alto, and then there was a football game, and there was a blimp, and there was a malfunction with the blimp, and then the blimp blew up, much like the conference. And then I ended with they all lived happily ever after.
All right, covering a lot of land and sea. It sounds like you all seem to be having a pretty good time. What happened in your story?
Well, Sarah saw a school of sharks that were apparently chewing on Charlie Baker. And Tar Heels rejoiced, and somehow Cliff Butler appeared on his surfboard, and it was declared a state holiday where all the children got Tar Heel keychains.
Okay, all right. I imagine your story at each table was a bit different, and it looked like you were having a pretty good time. Either that, or you laugh and smile when you're in pain. I mistook a smile for a grimace, or a grimace for a smile. So tell me a little bit about your experience working in this way, making up this story. I mean, how was it for you? Did you encounter any challenges? Was it just fun? I mean, what did you like? What did you not like? How did it make you feel? Anybody? What you got? Yes, sir.
It's kind of like when you go to the principal's office.
Okay.
We had to make stuff up.
And you look like you've been to the principal's office a lot. So was it fun, or was it did it make you anxious? It's fun. Okay. Yeah. What was challenging? Was there anything challenging? Yes.
For me, the challenging part was not thinking too far ahead. So when it was over here, thinking what I was going to say, but because by the time it came around, it was completely different.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I'm sure that's almost all of you. And it certainly applies to me when I play this game. You start getting ahead of yourself. And you're thinking, all right, what am I going to say when it's my turn? And it should probably be good, something snappy, you know, right? Funny, because you want to get some laughs, something clever, because you want to look clever. But the problem, of course, is what you're thinking about saying when it's 3 people ahead. Well, by the time it gets to you, what you were thinking of may not be relevant anymore. And also, you may be missing a lot of information because you're thinking about you and your idea rather than the story as it's evolving. I hope that follows. So, I like to say that improv is the art of being present. And it's very much about process. So, to compare it to scripted theater again, let's say you go see A Midsummer Night's Dream. Wonderful play, all right? But it was written also, you know, in around 1600, and you don't see the rehearsal process, you don't see the tech meetings, you don't see all that, you don't see the actors memorizing the lines, and maybe you even know the story, but, you know, you see the product at the end. When you go see an improvisational show, it's all happening right there. You are seeing the process of creating it. And that's challenging. And sometimes it doesn't go great, and sometimes it goes amazing. But what the performers have to do is stay present. They have to stay present, and what's more important than their own ideas is how they respond to those around them. So it's all about paying attention. You listen, you watch, and you respond. And while you're paying attention to your fellow players, they're paying attention to you. Because your job is to get outside of what you can do on your own. It's to escape your ego, escape the limitations of your own imagination. So a lot of times when we're collaborating with people, we see them as being like, I gotta work with this guy, you know. We see that as sort of a detriment to the process. If I can only get this guy out of the way of my ideas, everything's gonna go great. But the improv approach turns that on its head. And instead you look at your collaborators as being gifts and resources, because they're going to take you where you can't go on your own. And this is not just improv theater. This is, I don't know how many of you are jazz fans or jazz musicians, but that's how it works in jazz too, you know. And I've had it happen many times where I'll say it on an accompanist, like, oh, I really like you. I really like where you took me in that song, you know. And I say, oh, I was following you. Like, oh, okay, fine. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that we went somewhere that we couldn't have gone individually. What's the yes and about? Why did I have you say yes and? Alan, you can't answer this one. He's an improv veteran. Yeah.
It's an agreement and a continuation.
Yes, sir. That's right. Yeah. Yes.
Coherence somewhere.
Yeah. Sure. It's building on it. That makes sense. Yeah. Sure. Anything else?
It affirms the validity. It affirms the validity of whatever you were hearing from the other person.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yes. Yes. And yes. And that's right. Yeah. All of those things. We call it listen and build. Listen and build. So you're looking to acknowledge, and then you're looking to build off of what that person brought to you. Now, on an improv stage, that's crucial. You know, so if I'm doing a scene with someone, and my scene partner gives me a suggestion like, well, grandson, you ready to go fishing today? You know, well, that's the start of a scene. We don't know if it's going to be good or not, but, you know, it's an offer. And if I'm a good improviser, I will say, yeah, Granddad, I hope we get some fish this time as opposed to last time when we got nothing, you know. Fine, we've got a scene going. But what I wouldn't want to do in response to that is, I'm not your grandson. I am a llama from outer space, and I'm here to take over your soul. Yeah, first of all, it doesn't make sense. And we're going backwards with our scene. We're not going forward, we're going backward. So it hurts the creative process. But it's also going to do something to my partner. And that thing is, it's going to make that person hate me and never want to play with me again. Because I denied their idea. I stifled their idea. Yes?
So it sounds like now you're talking about politicians who, whatever the question is, they're not going to improvise and answer the question. They're going to say what they had planned to say in advance.
Yeah, we're definitely talking about a dream world here. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like psychologists are supposed to not know the answer to the question they asked, just as lawyers should never ask a question when they don't know the answer. So, but you are, I do want to talk about application here. How do we use this? So we want to avoid denial, we want to affirm, and we want to build off of the other person's, what they're putting out there. So how might you use a yes and approach, or even those actual words in everyday life? I mean, does that occur? Does a situation come to mind for you? Just wondering. By the way, I'm a professor. I'm used to asking questions. So, yes, ma'am.
To me, it's classic sales.
Hmm?
And salesperson taught well by Jim Hefner at WCHL years ago.
Yeah.
But I also was an attorney lobbyist in D.C. Sorry, Steve.
Okay.
That's exactly what you do. You're sitting there and you make sure you're listening so that you know and you're prepared, but you respond to what they are saying, not what your presentation said. And if you don't react to that, you're screwed.
Wow. Well, why aren't you the speaker today? That was very well put. I couldn't say it any better. But yes, you're actually listening to the other person rather than, you know, thinking about what you're supposed to say, or, you know, it's not about you, it's about them. Now that's a wonderful application. Just wondering, any other applications? Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, I've been thinking and asking myself, what are the applications? And sorry, Dan, I don't exactly see it in the sales role because the salesman shouldn't be talking. The salesman is just listening. But this exercise is making something up. So being present makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't see the second part.
Which is what?
Which is making something up, which is the improv part.
Oh, we're talking about the process here, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. So maybe we'll circle around and we'll scratch that itch. So I don't want you to leave you itchy. But we'll get around to it. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, just to respond, if you are selling and you are sitting before a senator or before a local business you're selling radio time to, if they say something and you don't respond and they want to hear a response, then you have failed, because the sales process is linking what's going on with them and helping educate them, and they want that.
This is very well put. Again, you're trying to, when they have a question, you're trying to ask them what they actually ask.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's a really nice example. Yes.
It works from the other side too. I interview people for a living.
Yeah.
Podcast host. It's completely unnatural if you only go by your script. You ignore everything that they say and just move in a sort of oblique way to the next question. You need to be present, listen, and segue naturally.
That's great. You sound like a great host. I don't know if you all heard that, but he was saying as an interviewer, he needs to respond to the answer that he receives. And yeah, I mean, I'm a former journalist. I can remember doing interviews with people, especially when I was like, I got my list of questions, boom, 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 boom. But oftentimes the next question, you can't see that in advance because it's in response to an answer. So again, it's being present and following this process. The yes and process is also very useful when it comes to innovation, ideation, brainstorming. So a brainstorm is essentially a yes and process. That is the big rule for a brainstorm. And if your brainstorm isn't working well, it's because people are forgetting that yes and. When you are brainstorming, what you're looking to do is maximize the potential, the creative potential of this process. And that means saying yes to everything because you're early in the process. You're early in the process. So even ideas that strike you as terrible, throw them in the hopper. Throw them in there. Sometimes two bad ideas make one good idea. Or it doesn't even matter. What you're doing is you're suspending the judgment and you're suspending the editing, refining process until later. Like I said, it's expanding the potential. When we talk about innovation, that's a word that has that Latin root right in the middle. It means new. Finding something new. You don't know what it is yet. You have to discover it. If you already knew what it was, you wouldn't be innovating. You wouldn't need to be having this brainstorm. So what you have to do is say yes and, yes and, yes and trust that you're going to get some good stuff rolling here. And also, there is that interpersonal dynamic of the yes and, where you're trying to keep the people on the team engaged in a positive way. So, like, if we're having a brainstorm and Cliff has an idea, and I say, I don't know, Cliff, seems kind of like a crappy idea to me. Well, all right, first of all, I've messed with the wrong guy. But second of all, he might just check out then. All right, fine. My contribution isn't needed here. And then, or it could turn into, oh, really? Really, Greg? Well, I'm going to get you back in a second. So either way, it's an interpersonal thing we want to avoid because you want to make sure everyone's engaged in your team. Hold on to it for just a second. I want to hear what you have to say. So you have the process and you have the interpersonal part. And ideally, as you move toward refining your idea, because that's where you're going eventually. You don't brainstorm at the end of an idea, a product or a service you're developing. You brainstorm at the start. But what you're hoping for is that everyone feels engaged and acknowledged and like they contributed, so that when it comes time to say, like, Cliff's thing really doesn't fit. He's probably going, I see now where my thing doesn't really fit, so, I'm not going to die on that hill. I hope that makes sense. I hope you're following what I'm saying here. I know from personal experience that if I just feel like I've been heard, I'm going to be much more amenable to letting go of my ideas and being flexible. And I feel like most people just want to be heard and acknowledged. And that's what Yes and is about. Yes, sir.
Well, I had a real world thing happen. I've overseen 90 guys of campus maintenance at UNC, and the leader before me was very much a my way or the highway. Oh. And we've been chasing an issue at Brower Hall that involved odor and inconvenience. The customer was very upset. And so we figured out what the issue was, and our boss basically decided that he wanted to do a level of protection that my team felt was a mistake. But he had a reputation of being closed-minded, and all he's going to do is talk around what your option is. I had a one-on-one Zoom with my supervisor. I went and got my lead technician and said, by the way, in talking about this, at the risk of offending him by putting him on the spot, I said, your idea, here's my man who knows more about this. This is why it may not be such a good idea. And so without saying yes and, he basically said why he thought it was. And so we landed a plane to where he was happy, And my technician felt like he was heard, because very much my leadership style is, just because we want your feedback doesn't mean we're going to agree with you, but we want you to be happy with the notion that you're going to be heard. And if your supervisor doesn't hear you, then that's the supervisor's fault. And I will talk to them about that.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. And it does bring up an interesting thing about the yes and process. So part of it is diplomatic. You know, they say in Japan, there are 50 different ways of saying no, but none of them involve the word no. So part of it is just being diplomatic. And then part of it, just because you're saying yes and doesn't mean that you don't have a conflict. Sometimes it helps to say, yes, I see where we have a conflict, and can we focus on how we're going to resolve this? I was actually at a conference of people who do applied improv like me. There's not that many of them, but you'd be surprised. Anyway, we're sitting around talking about yes and fun times. It's like arguing about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, you know. And people are saying, well, you can't use it for conflict resolution. And I said, yes, and I think you probably can. So I think that there's one other thing. I was doing this exercise with my MBA students just yesterday. You know, it's near the start of the term, and so this is one of the first things I like to play with the group. And I was asking them, well, you know, what do you think? And one of them said, well, it gives you a moment to say something, and a moment to think, but also you're going in a positive, you have like positive momentum. So it gets you headed in the right way, the yes and. So it is about affirming the other person, it's about building off of the other person, but it's also about keeping the momentum going in a positive way. So, yes, sir.
So typically, if I'm jumping ahead of where you're going with this, it seems to me that for us to apply this to our lives, the first thing we have to do is untrain ourselves from having said but all our lives.
Yeah.
Your mama and your daddy said, but son.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you knew that whatever they said was going to piss you off. because they did not understand. And the idea is that when you say yes, but, immediately what happens, you immediately created a confrontational situation. So it's important that you understand what Diane would also tell you in her training. We have a chapter that says never say but.
Yeah.
You can say except.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that rhetorically you can't say there, but for the grace of God go on. Mm-hmm. But in the context of a transition, and a transitional statement, but is the most poisonous word that you can use. You can substitute and every single time.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, but is it's a rhetorical U-turn.
Yes.
You know, and you're talking about your parents, and they're saying but you started it by saying no when you were 2, okay?
Right.
So the opposite of yes and is no but.
No but.
All right? And no but represents the illusion of control. Right. And this is one of the things that's really scary about improvising for just about anybody, whether they're a professional person or an actor or whatever. And I saw your hand, I want to hear what you have to say. Give me just a second. When you were just learning to speak, your favorite word was probably no. Because you're 2, you can't control anything, you can't even control your bowels. You know, you're like this little kid, right? You want some say, you can't really articulate it, so what do you say? You just say no. Do you want ice cream? No. Do you not want ice cream? No. You just say no. And it represents the illusion of control. And the thing is, you did that when you're a tiny, tiny kid. You get older, and you're still saying it. A lot of people are really addicted to that no. And I've staged improv to folks in their 70s and beyond. And some of them, man, they like that no. Shutting somebody off. I've got control. All right, great. You got control. What are you going to do? I don't have anything. I just, I just want to control. So that's okay, by the way. You know, the desire to control. The unknown is scary. That's all right. It's human instinct to want to have some control. But be aware of that. try to have the mindfulness to know when you are trying to control a situation or a person, because it's probably not the best way to go about it. Better to learn to, surf a situation rather than control that wave. I hope that metaphor works for you. So yes.
I'm still absorbing that concept at the end. You talk about illusion of control. I get it, but there are also different strategies for addressing situations, whether it's a negotiation where you are trying to lay out right now, this isn't going down the right path, or maybe it's a management issue where you're dealing with a very bad situation. Someone has done something incredibly inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And so there might be some different strategies where you're trying to set the tone right out of the gates by not starting with a yes, by starting with a absolutely no. Right. What you did was wrong. No, you can't grab somebody or say something.
Yeah. Okay, you bring up a really good point there. And it's really hard for me to come in and talk about something that, I teach over a course of a semester and still don't touch on all the things I want to touch on. But a little backfill might be helpful. So one of my undergrads told me at the end of the semester, he says, I had a great class and now I know I don't have to plan for anything. Like, but son, I said, son, that wasn't my goal for you. No, planning is good. Planning is a good thing, and if it's a difficult situation, a no situation, it's great to plan, to have tactics in mind, to consider different contingencies that might arise. So you've got your plan, but when it comes time to be in the moment of execution or performance, that's when you have to go into the improv mode. And that's when, for instance, something you didn't plan for comes up. You can't say, no, but this isn't happening. That's when you say to yourself probably, yes, Sam, this is happening. So how do I pivot? So I don't know if that addresses what you're talking about exactly, but the whole idea is understanding, one of my favorite quotes is from Dwight Eisenhower. Some of you might have heard him. He was a Zen master. Wow. Yeah, anyway. So Dwight Eisenhower, he said, plans are useless, but planning is essential. Or maybe it was the other way around. But the point is, Supreme Commander in European theater during World War II, he knew a little bit about planning, but he also knew about reacting, responding as a situation is developing. And I think that's helpful. There is no use railing against things not going according to your plan. You can think about later how you might have messed up in your planning, or how can I avoid making the same mistake? And when it comes time to do this thing, that's when you have to have that mindset. So thank you for bringing that up. Just one. I'm going to do just a little more backfill. So in the teaching that I do, this is just one little aspect of it. The curriculum that I developed all came out of this idea from my students. So I was teaching improv as a stagecraft, just like you teach in acting class. And then people were saying to me, oh, I use this at work now, or I use this at home with my family, or I use this in social situations. So I started thinking about these improv exercises and principles and techniques, and how you might use them in everyday life. And so that's what this is all about. So, if you were to sit in on my class at school, and if you ever want to, you're welcome. Not everybody all at once, but talk to me, we'll work it out. I'll even get you a visitor's pass for the parking lot, because you don't want to try to do that on your own. Anyway, so what we focus on a lot is we focus on collaboration, which you were just doing, creativity, which is just, or collaboration, which is group creativity, essentially, and the barriers to doing that well. And some of them are intellectual, and some of them are emotional, and some of them are a combination thereof. When I was thinking about what to do with you all today, I was also thinking about, well, we could work on some presentation stuff, you know, like acting for real people every day. So my goal for presenters is to get them to be dynamic and authentic, interesting, and to be in control of their physicality, meaning their gestures, their facial expression, their breathing, their speaking, all of these things. I'm a big fan. You might have heard of the method, you know, the Stanislavski method I don't do that, okay? The method is inside-out acting, where I'm thinking about like, yeah, when I was a kid, remember my grandmother baking cookies, and yeah, fine. You all can't really see that. The method does work for some people. I'm kind of old school when it comes to acting. I'm like, all right, you're playing a character who's sad. Let's see some sad up there, okay? Show us sad or angry or whatever it is. But what specifically I'm focusing on for professionals is this idea of trying to convey confidence and authority. Not necessarily power, but this idea that you know what you're talking about, that kind of authority. The problem for most professionals and students and whatever is not that they don't know what they're talking about. It's that they act like they don't know what they're talking about. And part of that ties in with the whole idea of the imposter syndrome, where a lot of us have been, I'm sure. But if you know a lot about something, you know how much you don't know about that thing. You know, yeah. And you might remember like when you were 17 and you did know everything. Yeah. And you get a little older and you realize you just don't know. It's sort of like, well, we were talking about playing tennis at our table here, and you know, you might be a pretty good tennis player, but there's always somebody better. And even if you're the best in the world, somebody might beat you that particular day. So having imposter syndrome is this natural thing. Overcoming it requires some technique. And a lot of that has to do with, a lot of stuff that I can't really get into right now. But that's one of the things that we work on a lot. So, you know, presentation skills, being expressive, and connecting with other people. Emotional intelligence, perhaps, is a good way of putting it. So, anyway, I've got like 5 minutes. I don't want to keep you all. Yes, Jim?
Well, I want to pick up on Brother Hapgood's question on that. There are very, very few times in life when it is ever most efficacious to say, no, stop, absolutely no way. If there's a physical threat that's about to be a life-changing experience, then nothing else matters. Tackle, hold them down, beat them, keep them from doing whatever they were about to do.
Yeah.
That rarely happens. I think that what you're telling us today is powerful enough as a concept that in every other place, whether it's the precise yes and, it's the concept of yes and, and it can apply to just about everything in life that you can dream up. So I'm going to give you a short. When I was in high school, I was running the radio station stuff. I had a chemistry professor who was the worst jerk in the world.
Yeah.
I went into his class late. He shut down the class, gave him a lecture on how awful I was, took me to the principal of the school, Ernest Lawson-Brown. He walked me down to the principal and told him how awful I was. The principal, he told the principal, send him on back. Now, I have been a jerk. I've been awful. And he said, what was that all about? And I said, well, he's a jerk. And he said, well, yes, why don't we talk about it? We went downstairs to the boiler room, he got him a cigarette, and then wanted to talk to me about dealing with jerks. Whereupon he proceeded to tell me that the chemistry professor wasn't really the jerk that I was. But he did that in a way that was so respectful of my point of view that I went out believing I had a lesson that was so good I could be telling it 75 years later.
Well, there you go.
I think what you're saying is applicable just about everywhere.
Well, thank you. And I want to mention something super brief, because you were talking about like an emergency situation, by the way. One of the things that is a determinant in whether or not you survive an emergency situation is if you accept that it's actually happening. People who say this can't be happening doesn't go so well. I think you had something and then you have something. Yes?
I heard you in another environment and you sang. Are you going to sing something?
I hadn't planned on it, but I didn't bring my accompanist.
We'll come along for you.
Oh, thank you. No, that's very kind. But if you want to hear me sing, you can come hear the Triangle Jazz Orchestra. We're at the plant down in Pittsburgh. I think a week from this coming Wednesday. Anyway, we're around. But thank you. That's awfully nice. Yes, sir.
I hardly ever say no in a conversation, but when the telemarketer calls, no way.
Right. Yeah. Just yes, and I'm not even picking up. Yeah. So anyway, thank you all very much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you very much. And once upon a time, there was a professor from Keenan Flagler who came to speak to East Chapel Hill Rotary. Yes, and we wanted to show you a touch of our appreciation. So thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
Very good. Good to see everybody. Have a good weekend. Go Heels.